Now to this, the 25-year-old Bojangles manager accused of killing a fellow employee's father stood before a judge today. The prosecution laid out their evidence, including what led up to the shooting earlier this month. Atlanta News First Sarah Hammond is live from the Fulton County Courthouse right now. And Sarah, what did you learn?
Well, today this was a pre-indictment hearing for the judge to determine if there was enough probable cause to send this case up to a grand jury, which he did. This is the case where Maurice Evans is accused of killing Dominique Goodwin in the Palmetto Bojangles parking lot earlier this month. And on the stand, a Palmetto police detective said Goodman's daughter, Amari, worked at the Bojangles with Evans, and the two had been involved in multiple arguments throughout the day. At some point, they say Amari unintentionally called her father, Dominique Goodwin, who heard the arguments and drove to the Bojangles with his wife. Evans, the defendant, had clocked out and was sitting in the car with his wife when witnesses and Evans say Goodman went up and tried to fight Evans. That's when the prosecution says Evans shot Goodman 8 times, 3 of those times in the back. Evans' attorney claims self-defense and pushed for a voluntary manslaughter charge. The prosecution says there's no question this was malice murder.
The testimony shows significant provocation that occurred.
Fled from him and shot him 3 times in the back. Stood over him and shot him 3 times in the back. This is just a textbook malice murder.
Now, Judge Todd Ashley called the arguments a close call, but ultimately sided with the prosecution, telling Evans he wished he had just driven on home that day. And Evans also has a bond hearing coming up at 1:30 this afternoon. Live here at the Fulton County Courthouse, Sarah Hammond for Atlanta News First.